Hey guys, one of the most simple formulas for going fast is a little car with a big motor. And that's what we have right here. Welcome to VTEC Academy. You're about to get schooled. We finished this thing up. This thing looks amazing. I think it fits in here super nice. It darn near looks like it belongs in here.
Yeah.
Just crazy. I mean, that's just nuts. You did a really nice job with the fuel system. Red valve cover looks great in here. I know you've got a few extra parts coming for it, but I can't wait to see those on the car. But this turned out super sweet. You've been driving it now for a little while.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's a beast.
It's a beast.
It's a street beast, and it is going to be a track beast for sure. The power is just, I remember the B16, you grab a gear, and it's like, wait for it, there it goes.
VTEC,
VTEC, wow. And
Yeah.
this thing, it's like you grab it, and it's just pulling the same. It's just linear with, hitting the peak torque and then getting up into the peak horsepower and just knowing where those are, setting the shift point. So, yeah, it's an absolute monster, and it's fun, just driving it down here on the freeway, just cruising in fifth gear. You want to pass somebody, you don't downshift, just roll
on the
into
throttle.
it. So
I used to love that. I had an EP3 with a CRV motor, the Piston Racing supercharger, and it was just gobs of torque right off the throttle. And I drove this. And this thing reminds me a lot of that 240 horsepower EP3 I was driving. We took it down to the dyno. Tim had some time available, and we had one of my bass tunes in it from a while ago.
Yep.
Tim put it on the dyno, and he actually had a little bit of a problem right off the bat. You remember what it was?
yeah, the O2 sensor was reading weird. It was
Yeah.
reading 22 and 23. So we didn't know if something was wired wrong. We
Miswired.
weren't getting any codes.
Right. Yeah, no code.
But then later I was playing with it and noticed it seemed just to be a little lazy. After it warms up, it reads totally fine.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Not even a heater problem.
Yeah,
I wonder if it's about to go out. But this is a brand new one, right?
brand new one. It's
All
a
right.
brand new RSX.
Interesting. Well,
So
we'll see
yeah.
if it breaks.
But other than that, so he tuned it on the sniffer, the O2 at the tailpipe.
Yeah.
And then just did open loop.
Yeah.
Closed loop, open loop.
Open loop.
So just went ahead and set it to open loop, and I've switched it back now that the O2 seems to be reading the.
Closed loop is when it's reading and it's a closed system. Open loop is when
It's
there's just a tune in the ECU and it's just
Following
doing
the
what it
tune.
says. Right. So the final horsepower figure, after, I don't know, probably took him 6 or 7 runs, I think, was
220 horsepower at about 7,000 RPM. And then 200 foot-pounds at 45 or at 4,000 RPM.
Yeah,
Or
right.
40, 4,000.
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge hit right when the VTEC turned on.
Yeah.
It was just immediate.
Yeah, and and it holds through 4,500 before it starts to fall
Tail off.
All we did was change the oil pump to a Type S oil pump.
Yep.
And put the RBC 50-degree VTC. Otherwise,
And board throttle body.
yes. And I sent the intake manifold and throttle body to King Motorsports and had it opened up to 64 millimeter.
Yep.
So it matches basically the 06 to 08 K24A2 because the Accord is a 60 millimeter throttle body. So
Right. Now it also has a K-tune swap header on it.
Yep.
which is known for making good horsepower, and you did a 3-inch intake with a bell mouth and a big giant
Yeah, I think it's a 6-inch bell mouth on
right,
that.
and this
6 or
cone
7 inch.
filter from Blocks. Yeah,
it was cheap.
and it's so inexpensive. Works so well.
You know, the RBB manifold obviously is for torque.
Yeah.
And that extra, that 50-degree VTC, we're calling 40. I looked at the tune. I think there was one spot
40
where it was
degrees
45,
advance.
40 degrees of advance. So he's like, that's why we're able to see such a huge torque, because, you know, I was kind of going into this, my goal was the 10-to-1 power to weight ratio for the class, because we were maxed for the B16 as well. So that maxes us at the class rules.
Interestingly, we're at 2,224 pounds and 200 and whatever, 2 horsepower. So that puts us almost exactly at the horsepower you were shooting for.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, we've got the number. And then I was kind of figuring I was going to see somewhere about 180, 185 foot-pounds. So that extra...
Yeah, 50 foot-pounds is, yeah.
That extra foot-pounds is happy to have, because...
Well, it's nice, because sometimes you don't want it downshift.
No.
You're in a corner, you know you're going to have to upshift mid-corner, so having that extra torque, then you just kind of motor through it, and
Yep.
And this car is not going to pay a price.
No, and it's going to pull itself right out just fine.
Yeah.
And I did some simulations. So you can put in your horsepower and torque data. You can put in your transmission gear ratios, your tire sizes, and simulate shifting and to see where you land. And so first gear to second gear would be 7,200 RPM to land right at the peak torque again. Every gear after that, 7,000 is the sweet spot. And first to second is never really a track. It's always going to be second to third. So
Right.
it's always going to be a 7,000 RPM shift. And we know that now. We've set the rev limiter to 8,000. So if I need a little extra to get into a corner, I have it. And that's, another benefit of the Type S oil pump.
Yeah,
and it's a 4-piston. Yeah, and it's a 4-piston, so they've done some work to it besides modifying it to fit.
Right.
So don't have to worry about oil issues.
Excellent. Now, so I was super impressed with how quickly he got to the 200 and whatever horsepower. I was super happy with it. I thought that was great, and I'm glad that we got what we were shooting for. What do you expect from the track?
Well, I've been driving it on 205s. The old setup with the B16 was a 205 square setup.
Yeah.
It worked just fine. The new setup, I haven't driven it on it yet, is a 245 front, 225 rear. I think that 245 will do a great job of managing that torque.
Because right now in second gear, if you roll on the throttle, you just light them up.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, and that's
second
on
gear.
flat, straight ahead ground. That's not cornering.
Exactly,
Yeah.
where you've got transfer and asking
Yeah.
the tire to do more than just deliver power, right? So I think that the 245 will give me the ability to roll into the power in the corners. And that's one thing about racing a front-wheel drive car is, you set them up a little loose and you use the throttle to outdrive the rear end.
Yeah.
And so being able to do that, I'll be able to set the car up a little bit looser. And with a bigger back tire as well, I'll have more lateral grip, plus a huge jump in the front tire just to manage the extra torque.
Yeah, very good.
So I'm anticipating much.
Your braking should improve, your cornering should improve, and then your acceleration out of the corner obviously is going to get better.
Yes.
It should be really interesting.
And
do you have any tracks that you can run on that you've run before? Because right now they're like closing all the tracks and moving around here in Arizona.
I never ran on AMP, no. And Firebird, I've done all, unless they ever have a special event before it's gone.
Yeah.
Firebird was the one that I ran on.
I think Firebird just ran its last events.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate.
For Wild Horse
Have you ever
Pass.
been down to the one Tucson? Too bad. I would still like to see a comparison. Well, that's okay.
We know it's going to be faster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, and there's other things that I changed before we did the swap. I upgraded the brakes. It's you can't go faster and not expect to need to stop better.
Yeah.
So I went from the brake kit that was on there to a full Willwood kit. So there's more braking, bigger rotor. From a 9.5 to an 11-inch rotor.
Wow.
So you need to be able to stop. And
you're going to be coming into corners much faster than you were before, and
Yep.
you
And
need
I've
that heat, and you need that size.
I upgraded the torsion bars in the front, so we've got a little bit more there. Done some things in the rear. So it still wouldn't even be an apples to apples because I've made some suspension changes that I was working on previously that didn't happen before. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a different car to drive. With the B16, you could be a little bit lazy in that you could just stab the throttle.
Exactly.
You could treat the throttle like an on and off switch.
Yeah, because it wasn't going to break them loose.
It wasn't going to break. It didn't have the torque.
Yeah.
With this, it's going to be, you're going to have to modulate.
You're going to have to drive the car.
You're going to actually drive it. Yeah. So, and that's fun.
Yeah, it's true.
When you can do that, because you know you can find those edges and you can work with them. When it's always just got the traction, sometimes you find the edge and it surprises you. So to me, I like that ability. And the other thing you can do too is if you got a bit of oversteer, you get it and you force in a little understeer. That corrects out the oversteer, and then you can let it come back. And so you can create balance within the car by using the throttle.
Yeah, that's one thing I really liked about having the supercharged CRX that I had. That car is such a short car that it was nice to be able to get the back in position pretty quickly just by stabbing the throttle, because that K24 with supercharger, which was another car around, and that was about 300 horsepower.
Yep.
And that torque was immediate, so much like this is going to be, and it made it really easy to catch it when it was getting loose.
Yeah.
Cool. The sound is amazing.
I love it. It's a little intoxicating. It's definitely a different note than the B16 was.
Oh yeah, the 3-inch exhaust, and just the K series sounds different. It sounds angry, even at low RPM. Unlike the B16, which didn't sound angry until VTEC.
No, yeah.
So, and it just sounded like you shook up a can of bees. So it wasn't that angry. I'm kidding. But this car sounded just great when we were out on the road. So we took it for a little drive. You pounded it a couple times to pass, and the sound was just amazing. Really, really good.
And it shoots. I mean, it just takes off.
Yeah, it's gone.
Almost there. Almost. I'm partially under. Okay, I'm under on this side. Okay,
It's not side loading.
come on, barbecue.
We have our before and after. So basically, after performing the swap, we moved a lot of weight over the right front. And you're going to be able to adjust some of this. Well, let's talk about when the driver. So the swap added 24 pounds. And I always tell people that a K20 and a B18C weigh the same. But you had a B16, which weighs slightly less than a B18C, and you put a K24 in, which weighs more than K20 does. So that is what kind of accounts for the 24-pound difference. If you're doing B18C to B18 to K20,
Be very
K20,
similar.
yeah, it should be very similar. It should be within a pound. Okay. So it's really
So,
close.
24 more pounds.
Plus,
But
how many more foot-pounds of torque?
yeah, we went from 148 horsepower to the wheels to 220, and we went from 108 foot-pounds of torque to 200 foot-pounds of torque.
199.9 or whatever it was.
So I think we made
up
more
for that?
for the 24 pounds.
Okay, so it's a plus. All right, did find with the driver in it, let's see here, before the swap with the driver, you had actually set it up for fairly equal weight balance, so you need to do a little bit of work on that.
Yeah, and that was
right.
The car was corner balanced.
Right.
So
yeah,
it had the suspension adjusted such to try and get these similar.
Right.
As much as you can, knowing this corner is always light because the fuel tank's on this side. So
yeah, well, that's not horrible. But now we have, well, that right rear is really light now. So, but we'll see what we can do to kind of balance out between those two.
Yeah, and what I can do is lower the left front, which pulls weight off and puts weight here. It's kind of like corner balancing is kind of like standing. the tire pushes on the ground, right?
Right.
So this is pushing on the ground harder, so we just need to make that push on the ground harder.
So that will actually, because it's crossed, it'll actually
Put weight back
put more
here
weight
too.
there and take less weight off both of those. So
Yep.
cool. I'd be interested to see what the 4-corner heights are once you do that.
Yeah, they're always different.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I typically do is try and set the front or the rear a 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch higher than the front.
Mm-hmm.
And then because this is a torsion bar suspension, you want your control arms to be horizontal, right?
Right.
Because they're swinging through that arc on this with
Right.
the torsion bar. So what I do is I'll start even and then alter it from there. What's just really weird is these cars are so short that tweaks act really weird. They don't do necessarily always what you expect it to do.
Right.
But
Yeah, because
you can
everything's
still,
so close to the center of
it-
gravity that you can really cause them to teeter-totter in
Ex-
ways you didn't expect them to
Exactly.
do. Yeah.
Yep.
So do you adjust the rears also to get kind of
Yeah.
what you
Well,
want?
so what I'll do is I'll disconnect the rear sway bar because it's having the
It has
most
preload.
impact. It has
Yeah.
preload. The front doesn't.
Right.
But I can go all the way and just remove the bolts from the front as well. Get the car and see how close I can get it. Can I manipulate that to get the fronts? That's really the goal is to get the fronts close.
Right, because that's doing the majority of your turning.
Exactly. The rear is just along for the ride, but the plan will be to do some weight reduction in time and put that weight back here.
Uh-huh.
So like pull the sunroof out. That's about 30, 35 pounds. Put that 30, 35 pounds back here. Then we can start moving that weight around. Does it need to go behind the passenger seat? Does it need to go all the way in the rear corner?
Got it.
And we can improve the game, right?
Sure, absolutely. I did notice that the driver has gained 5 pounds.
Texas barbecue.
Okay.
I was in Texas all week.
All right. There you
So,
go. So it's
that's what I
temporary.
blame.
It's temporary.
It's temporary.
All right.
Yes.
Very good. I was going to say that's where you could lose some weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah.
I had that problem with the B16. When I dropped 40 pounds,
Oh, it messed up your
it
balance?
messed up the corner balancing. Because that was a pretty significant
Yeah.
weight change,
You're not
40
gonna-
pounds in
You're
this.
not going to lose 40
No.
pounds this time.
But it did do what we expected.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. It swapped the
It
weight.
shifted the weight up here where we thought it would. So
It's funny. I think a lot of times, I don't know, in the early days of Honda with the engine on the other side, you know what I mean? The driver on the left side, the driver was on the right side in Japan.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's how they
No, that's
designed
totally-
it purposely like that.
I think because the fuel tank's on the left side too. So they put motor and fuel tank on the left side of the car, driver on right side,
Yeah.
and that gives you better balance.
So it's probably a conscious decision on their part in order to make it a faster,
Yep.
sportier ride.
And I've
Interesting.
thought about looking at how can I move the fuel tank
Mm-hmm.
to the right side of the car. Again, staying with the stock fuel tank, is there any way to kind of shift things over? Because I have an SI tank,
That would-
but I have a DX tank, which is a smaller tank.
Right.
And
Isn't the HF one the smallest?
No, HF. HF and DX have the exact
same,
same
okay.
fuel tank. The
Like 10 gallon or something like that.
Yeah, the SI had the bigger fuel tank.
Right.
So it had a little bit more capacity.
Because they knew those guys weren't in it for the fuel economy.
No. Well, I mean, my 85 DX, it's rated for like 40 mpg.
Yeah.
Before
1970 or
from
yeah,
1985.
1984. Yeah, exactly.
And the HF was a 50
Was 50.
something. It was 53,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
So
Crazy. All right, so we accomplished that. That was pretty good. Other than Hasport,
yeah.
you had a little help.
Yeah,
So-
K-Tune came through for some parts for us, obviously, during the process to help make all this come together. And then Heel Toe hooked me up with a few items, the valve cover dress-up stuff, but some other things, RBC gear and some stuff, so appreciate that help. And then True Bends, which doesn't technically make a kit for this car, helped out, hooked us up a little discount on exhaust kit that we could hack up and try.
Yeah.
And it's a full 3-inch stainless steel.
And it's for the second gen CRX.
It's actually for the second gen CRX. And so it actually works really well. And there's a new owner of that company and he wanted that feedback so he could see. And he's actually looking at changing the second gen one because they just have one kit. and the front part has the jog,
which is unnecessary.
Which is unnecessary on the K.
For a K, yeah.
And so I shared that feedback, and he's going to look to make an option where you can actually select the motor you have, and
That's
it would change. To him, it's no different. It's actually less work, right?
Yeah, because what happens is the cables come out and go left because they have to go out the engine bay. So on a
B or
on
D.
a shift linkage car, they drop off to the right side and go up to the transmission.
So you got the exhaust has to do the little doggy leg.
So there's got the little dog leg in there, right?
Yep. And so that, you know, gave him that feedback, and it's nice to know that you can use that kit as a great starting point, and it's all mandrel bent. So you don't have to go to some shop and have them crush bend you some junk exhaust system.
Or pay the big dollars to have somebody take up something that's super sweet, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, his kits are only a couple $100, and honestly, I got 2 quotes from company shops in town to make me a 3-inch exhaust. One was just under $2,000, and the other one was about $150 less than that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
yeah. And we actually had Chris Sadowski do the welding on this.
Yeah.
So he's a YouTuber and fabricator here in the Valley, and he was nice enough to modify it in order to get it to work. So that was excellent. He had to shorten a few things in order to get it to tuck up because the second-gen CRX is just a slightly bigger car.
Yeah.
So.
And I kept the stock exhaust outlet location. We got the muffler in the stock spot. I did put a resonator muffler in the midsection.
Right.
Just to help tone it down a little bit.
Well, eventually you want to go visit AMP.
And they've got a 96 dB rule.
Right.
So I've got a high flow cat, and so that's the other thing too is if I break the sound, I can throw that cat on there. Won't lose a ton of horsepower because 200 cell 3-inch cat is rated for much higher horsepower motors.
Yep.
But it'll actually tone it down a little bit. I did the swap just listening to it, and you could definitely hear there was a volume sound difference.
Well, that's good. Some shorter shift cables would have been nice. We got hybrid racing shift cables, and they're just for an EG, and they're just a little long.
Actually, they're RSX.
Oh, they are. I'm sorry. Yeah, not their swap cables. They're RSX, stock RSX cables, because we put an RSX like shifter in it.
Yeah, it's got their no-cut shifter is what I went with.
Yeah.
And so it just bolts up underneath the floor, which worked out pretty well.
Yeah. And then it uses stock RSX cables, but they're just slightly too long. I mean, they work good on an EG, but on this short car, they're not quite as good.
They could be
I'm hoping that they could come up with something about 5 inches shorter.
Yeah, I'd say 5 to 7 inches shorter.
I think if they do 5, it's fit the other CRX too.
Oh,
I think if they do 7, it's only going to fit this.
Yeah. So I mean, 5 inches is enough.
Yeah.
It's kind of snaking around a little bit right now.
But how does it feel? Still feel pretty good?
Yeah, it feels great. I mean,
even with the bends.
Coming from a sloppy B16, where it was
big,
like kind of, where's it at? Well, and just
it's also modified 1986 Integra shift linkage, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
We shortened our length in 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch, and that was what we did back in the day. By the way, this car, we swapped a B16 in it in
1999 or 2000.
Yeah, 99, 2000. That was one of the very first articles that would for what they call the hybrid how-tos in sport compact car. So you've been driving around. Well, you've swapped a couple motors in there, but you've been driving around.
A few B16.
Yeah, you blew up a few. So, but you've been driving around B powered for 20 years. Yeah, so
a long time.
Yeah, 23 years. Wow.
Yeah. Raced EW powered, EW3 powered for a long time, and then we did the B series. And
in fact, there's some cool video footage of me and Carter's B series CRX and you and this B series out at PIR, one of the last races that was out there, if I recall.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was fun.
Yep.
Yeah, it's come a long ways. The car's developed well, and it's fun to drive, and it's I started racing this thing, and I got it in 1992 as the second owner. I started racing it, I think, in 93 or 94.
Wow.
And autocross, Solo 2. And so it's funny, it's like that pair of shoes. You just slip in, and it feels like home. And I'm starting to get a feel for the shifter, because that feels totally different. But I already getting the feel for that, and it's far more precise, which makes it easier to shift.
Nice.
And I don't even have it set to the shortest throw. I don't like
really
short.
The shortest throw, because then it tends to miss shift. I think people make that mistake and then force overrev the motor. By the way, this has a little bit of force rev protection because the K24, you're not into the 9,000 RPM that a lot of people are missing shifts with and causing their K20s to blow up.
Yep.
Oh, you also did something with the oil pan.
Yeah, so knowing that we're going to track it, and the K-Series has got known
notorious for long
issues.
right-hand sweepers.
Yep. So we went with, in addition to the oil pump, went with the Unit 2 oil pan, which is this steel-style oil pan. So it's an OEM oil pan that they baffle. They have Marcus at Heel Toe was sharing that he saw, we were trying to get a different oil pan actually at first and couldn't get it. And then Marcus was the one that said, hey, check out this Unit 2. He's getting a lot of good feedback from guys that race. And so yeah, jumped on that. And I think that's going to, the combination of, a pump that's going to perform better with a good oil pan with baffles. We
and a K20 dipstick.
Yeah. K20 dipstick.
We do a K20 dipstick so that we put more oil in the car.
Yeah.
And then it's less likely to starve. That's something we discovered accidentally in 2003 after blowing up a couple of RSX motors on this long uphill right-hand sweeper at Streets of Willow. We would race car, have fun, we'd go to Willow, and it'd get a rod knock. And we're like, that's going on? And it was that long right-hand sweeper. The oil would slosh to the left side of the oil pan because it's kind of sloped. It would slosh up there. Plus it would get, your full throttle for so long, all the oil would gather in the head and wouldn't get down. It would be like, so it would just starve. And it would starve out one of the bearings and all of a sudden, you'd come in after, man, that was awesome. And tick, 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 tick. And you're like, oh no. So
yeah, hopefully that's the magic recipe again from the feedback we got is that it'll work for us. And this is not from it's from
a Type R.
Yeah, it's from the Z.
Yeah. K24Z or K20Z.
K20Z, and I held the two together, and it's just the full line dot is just a little bit higher, so it adds that extra half a quart.
Right.
So yeah. Keep it there and
cool.
An extra layer of protection, and the clutch feels totally different, going from cable to hydro.
Yeah, we designed a hydro conversion for this thing, and that was pretty good. We first thought there was a problem with our measurements, but turned out we just had air in the system.
Had air in the system and just needed to thread out the rod a little longer, and it's working. It's got a good feel.
Releases where you want it.
Yeah, it's about mid-pedal travel. It feels good. It's had a very different feel than the cable style.
Sure. Oh yeah.
The hydraulic has it's actually much smoother. The cable
it's so much smoother.
The cable almost felt gritty and grindy, and you could.
Well, 20 years old.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I think we got a good combo, and ready to get her out.
Ready to go thrash it and thrash some people.
Yeah, and surprise some folks.
Excellent. Well, the next time we get you in a video, it'll probably be at a track somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be good. If you guys are interested in doing a swap like this in your 84-7 Civic, I'm going to put together a parts list and we'll post it up on the VTEC Academy website. That's vtec.academy or vtecacademy.com. You'll be able to download the parts list for this particular swap. I'm not going to give you the other transmission combinations, but understand that if you that within a few weeks we'll actually have brackets available to put the other types of transmissions in as well. But the parts list I'm going to put up is going to be specifically for this swap that we did right here. And then at some point down the road, I'll also put up a wiring diagram because the wiring was a little bit tricky. We had to add a relay into the radiator in order to get it to work off the ECU. And
one inside as well.
Yeah, one inside as well for the air-fuel ratio sensor. And then we also had to connect to a couple of wires at the ECU and a bunch of wires at one of the plugs in there. But all in all, not terribly different than an 88 to 91 Civic. Just a little bit different. But I'll try to put that all together and get that out as well. And I'm sure somebody at some point will make an adapter harness. We actually took an Accord harness and I added the adapter harness into the Accord harness just to make it all one thing. And I'm totally not interested in doing that for anybody else. I'll tell you right now. That took several hours. So
yeah, it was a lot of work.
But at some point I'll put a video out on how to do that, because I did the same thing with my EG. I'm probably going to do the same thing with other cars here in the future as well. Probably when the girls do their Civic, I'll probably do that with theirs as well.
Yeah, I like the Accord that it separates.
Yeah, we use the Accord, yeah, because it separates right here at the firewall. So if you ever got to drop the motor because you have a rod knock, you don't have to reach inside the car and disconnect the ECU from the thing and pull out the adapter harness stuff, which is a real pain in the butt. So I thought it worked a lot better. Anyway, you have any questions about the swap or any swap that we've done, you can reach us at askvtecacademy@gmail.com, and we will do our best to answer your question. On top of that, if you guys know somebody with a car like this and you think K-Swap would make their life, why don't you share the video with them? We're really hoping to push to that 100,000 subscriber mark. We're right at 95,000 right now, and it would be cooler than heck to reach that 100,000 by summertime. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you all for joining us on another episode of VTEC Academy. Thank you for clicking on us, and we'll catch you next time.